Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Usman Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, and welcome to all the devotees on the line. Thank you very much for your attendance and association as we continue associating with Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. Canto 1, Chapter 13, verses 14 to 28, Dhritarashtra quits home. quite a few verses. Let's see how we can proceed through these verses. We have load shedding at 6 o'clock, so let's see how many verses we can cover. If we don't complete, we will continue next week. Let's see. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Puyusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidvando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivarchita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar from the ocean of all the scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enrich with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, you are the Lord which has risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga, you actually are Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasha Rayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mat Sangim Mad Guru Maham Mad Mahadana Man Nashtaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahi Naktini Chochataraka Hannamun Chakada Chinmam Premna Rikatyospura O Srimad Bhagavatam. O give of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift the very fallen. Please do not leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma Trot, the company and pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yatonvayaditarata Charte Subhigna Swara Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimaya Yatra Sargo Mrsha Damna Swena Sada Nirastakwakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudev, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in delusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him did the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature of the effectual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existing in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanal Pasha Sabya Palavismi Nugejana Mandasumana Matayo Mandabagyu Padrata, all under the one in the signage of Kali, many but short lives are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayam Namaskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Patojayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a very means of conquest. One should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God at Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai Pumsa Parodharma Yato Bhaktira Dokchaja Ahituka Pretayata Yayatma Suprasiddhati, the supreme occupation dharma of all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, completely satisfied the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yaksha Vairagyam Yanam Chayat Ahitakam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of God at Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires, causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yachkananamad bayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, call this non-dual substance, Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan, Shushrushurdanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatseva Yapi Prapunya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from vice, all service is done by such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantastoya Bhadrani Vidunati Suritsatam Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of devotees, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagava Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance and classes on the Bhagavatam and rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us cover any feedback from the devotees from Canto 1, Chapter 13, verses 8 to 13. If you remember any specific point that we covered in our last session, please share that in the chat. Then we will proceed for today's verses. Thank you, Madhachana Siddhi. Says Hare Krishna Prabhu, in Krishna consciousness, our retirement is going to the holy places for preaching, service, and focus on Krishna consciousness. I'm in India since more than 1.5 months, and I've been visiting Mayapur and now in Vrindavan. Both places are overcrowded. We cannot even have proper darshan of the deities. So the question is how to focus on our Krishna consciousness in such a situation. This is not a problem. This is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. If it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, then these holy places would not be visited. So the fact that the holy places are becoming crowded is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. Now, in today's verses, we are going to touch on the influence of time. His Holiness Jai Pataka Maharaj also one time made this point, that now when we have the opportunity for service, for visiting the holy places, we should take full advantage, because there will be a time where you will have to wait in queue. 1,001 devotee in the line to do some deity service. Or you have to wait few months to go to India because there's no tickets, all booked, or prepare ahead. Or you go to the holy Dham and there's so many people. Prabhupada's vision was to bring the whole world to Vrindavan and Mayapur. Right now, the whole world is not there. And already you are experiencing it as overcrowded. So this is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. Yes. And we shouldn't see it as an obstacle. We shouldn't see it as something negative. We should see it as Prabhupada's glory. Now, how do we handle that situation? This is why we need to go more and more internal. And even in the Dham, as long as you have your own space, for example, you go to Krishna Bara Mandir and you sit in one corner of Krishna Bara Mandir, and now you absorb yourself by hearing about Prabhupada, or hearing Krishna Katha, even just in that one spot. It's not so much going external, but more going internal. You may visit 1 or 2 holy places and try to now absorb those pastimes deeper into one's consciousness. In that way, wherever you are, you start to manifest the holy Dham. So yes, we should go visit holy places. And due to the influence of time, I remember we were going every year to Vrindavan, and then started working, so could not go. And then after 12 years, we happened to go to Vrindavan. And after 12 years, when I come into Vrindavan, it was like a shock. Gee, it's like, where is Kesi Ghat? Where's Kalya Ghat? Because now, I was used to the river and the natural trees, and now it's all buildings. And wondering, where's Kalya Ghat? Oh, there's Kalya Ghat. It's like, walled and trees there. So this is the nature of and the power of time. Time will change. Time will influence. But we need to still appreciate the Dham and see what Prabhupada is doing. Yes, Prabhupada will bring the whole world. That's what Prabhupada wants, right? That's why his desire was to build a Vedic planetarium, to bring all the scientists and all the intellectual people. So it's going to be overcrowded multiple times. Glory of Srila Prabhupada. Sharina, Haribol, please accept my humble obeisance and appreciation. Pure Bhagavats who carry Krishna in their hearts turn places they visit into holy places of worship. When you visit holy places, the mindset should be to render service. And at these holy places, one should hear and learn from the Vaishnavas that are there. And also, when we go to holy places, we have to understand that the holy places are, especially Vrindavan and Mayapur, they're not ordinary. Wherever Krishna performed his pastimes, those pastimes are personalities. Everything is personification. Every single dust in Mayapur and Vrindavan is transcendental, it's Chintamani. It has the power to reveal all the pastimes of Krishna. It is touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. It is spiritually potent and powerful. So even if a certain place is crowded in the Dham, we can find a small space in the holy Dham that is not occupied and take, absorb ourselves in that small vicinity. So Madhuri just sharing one, we were hearing memories from one devotee, and he said, when he visited, like for Prabhupada's disappearance, he was in the festival in Vrindavan, and he said every year when he comes to Vrindavan and he sees it, he can't recognize devotees here. It's like, oh, these are new devotees I can't recognize. It amplifies Prabhupada's glory, and it amplifies the followers of Prabhupada who are preaching. We want to see more and more different faces. We want to see more and more new faces. Every time I come to the temple, I don't know this person. Very good. Because that means we are preaching. If we know the people and same people are coming, means we are not serving Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission. Namavati Radhika, Yudhishthir Maharaj told Vidura that he turns places into places of pilgrimage. Wherever Srila Prabhupada went, he made that place of pilgrimage. Yes. And this is why Bhakti Maharaj, when they asked him where he wants to have his samadhi, he said in Gitanagari. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada came there. That was Prabhupada's first farm project that Srila Prabhupada started. And because Prabhupada went there, that's the place of pilgrimage. So therefore, leaving your body in any place where Srila Prabhupada visited, or where Srila Prabhupada desired a temple, or where Srila Prabhupada's deity and ISKCON is, that is the holy Dham. Just like we have Mayapur Dham in Gauteng, in Lenasia. It is not different from the spiritual worlds. We may see it as Lenasia. It is not Lenasia. It is the spiritual world. So if you leave your body in the spiritual world, in the temple, that is Mayapur Dham. Shamananda Prabhu, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the ongoing nectar. We see Vidura refrain from giving some distressing news to the devotees. How do we know how to divulge or not divulge some information to others, or even how much, even though it may be distressing? Sexual probably saying distress comes on its own accord. Yes, another devotee also asked me the same question. And these instructions, and some of the instructions we will need to let it unfold naturally, which means we understand the philosophical point, but we may not be able to apply it as best as it should be. So therefore, we turn inwards to Krishna and pray to Krishna. Now, it's not a sin, just like if a family member dies or devotee leaves his body, it's not a sin to inform, other well-wishers and other devotees that this devotee has left. That is not a sin. Right? It is just that as one matures, naturally, the devotee starts to cultivate the quality of paradukha dukhi. He cannot see others suffering. And that quality of not seeing others suffering prevents you from saying certain things. Now consider, I'm going to, let's say, use my own example, right? I may tell someone something nasty and hurt their feelings. Where's the quality of paradukha dukhi? Because I just hurt somebody's feelings. And therefore it didn't even strike me. It didn't even, well, you deserve it. But as one evolves in Krishna consciousness, then those natural qualities of paradukha dukhi will prevent you from even saying something nasty. Take Srila Prabhupada's example. From all the memories we have heard, from all the conversations we have heard, did Srila Prabhupada say something nasty to someone to hurt their feelings? Never. See, why? Because he's paradukha dukhi. It reminds me of one time when Prabhupada was driving the car with a devotee at the back, early in the morning in America, and the devotee, who was in the car, he was saying, oh yeah, because it was early in the morning, so everybody's going to work. And the devotee was saying, Prabhupada, just see these hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Because the Bhagavatam says, right, hogs, dogs, camel, and asses, they're all driving to work, wasting their time, etc. So he was quoting a philosophical verse, revealing that reality that was facing him, that these people are rascals, they like hogs, dogs, camel, and asses, working hard, wasting their time. But when he looked at Srila Prabhupada is tearing. Srila Prabhupada saw the same situation and didn't, even though it's true, hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, but Prabhupada felt compassionate. Prabhupada's heart was bleeding. Prabhupada was tearing. This is compassion. So this naturally will come as we evolve. So do not allow certain philosophical points to act on your consciousness when one's heart is not ready. You can keep the philosophical point in the back of your consciousness, but also have, wait for your heart to be ready, right? So your heart and your head needs to align. Without your heart and head not aligning, then your head wants to do one thing and your heart wants to do one thing. And generally your heart will drive the dictation. Right? Your heart will dictate, your heart will drive that's the reality. So let us continue practicing Krishna consciousness, and in this way, as we become more and more purified, these qualities and the philosophical statements will align themselves. All right, thank you very much for everyone's feedback. Let us proceed. So we're going to be covering 14 to 28. Vidura arrives in Hastinapur. Again, what brought him? Not the fact that it's been exhausting traveling all over the world, and now I need a nice bed to rest on. I need nice food. I need some servants to look after me. Let me, relax now. No, it was his compassion. Compassionate nature of Vidura brings him to deliver his brother. So Vidura now, his purpose is revealed in chastising, administering chastisement to Dhritarashtra. First lesson we want to learn: never chastise if there is no relationship of trust and love, right? Trust, love, and faith. If that is not there, do not chastise anyone. Why? Because they will take it in the wrong way. Vidura loved his brother. Vidura had, that had a relationship with his brother, and therefore, even as a minister, his brother had faith in him. That was conducive for him to now come and help his brother. Text 14. Kanchit kalam atavat set shat krito devat devavat sukham pratur jeshtasya shreyaskrit sarvesham sukham avahan. Thus Mahatma Vidura, been treated just like a godly person by his kinsman, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his elder brother, and in this way bring happiness to all the others. So Vidura came to help his brother, but everyone else that was there also took advantage of Vidura's mercy, Vidura's association. So they were all also listening to Vidura's instructions. They were also very happy to receive Vidura, right? The great Mahatma. Now, Vidura's instructions to his brother and Srila Prabhupada's purports, these sections these verses that we're going to cover, they are cutting. They are revealing the truth. And the sooner we embrace the reality and the truth of life, the less pain and frustration we will experience. The more stubborn one becomes, the more difficult life and life's circumstances will present themselves. So as we go through these purports, keep in mind that these words that Vidura is sharing and Prabhupada's expanding, we want to really understand them and realize the truth behind these words. Prabhupada's purport. Saintly persons like Vidura must be treated as well as a denizen from heaven. In those days, denizens from heaven, from the heavenly planet, used to visit homes like that of Mahayudhishthira. And sometimes person like Arjuna and others used to visit higher planets. Narad is a spaceman who can travel unrestrictedly, not only within the material universes, but also in the spiritual universes. Even Narad used to visit the palace of Mahayudhishthira, what to speak of other celestial demigods. It is only the spiritual culture of the people concerned that makes interplanetary travel possible, even in the present body. Mahayudhishthira therefore received Vidura in a manner of reception offered to the demigods. So Prabhupada in the Sri Shopanishad also talks about interplanetary preaching. So that means in the future, we will go to other planets also to preach. Foresight from Srila Prabhupada. The demigods, they can travel, they can come visit, and this was normal in previous ages. And now because of Kali's influence and the negative influence, the negative vibrations, the demigods do not even want to place foot. What to talk about visiting? There is no cultured, spiritually elevated souls. Now, that does not mean that there is no, then we may not be able to see them and recognize them. We know when Srila Prabhupada was present, he had visits from the demigods. So great saintly persons that we may not have, we may not know, they definitely would receive audience. But ordinarily, like Mahayudhishthira, he was the king. He was the emperor of the planet. So everybody knew him. And everybody knew that great demigods were visiting. Mahatma Vidura had already adopted the renounced order of life, and therefore he did not return to his paternal palace to enjoy some material comforts. He accepted out of his own mercy that what was offered to him by Yudhishthira, but the purpose of living in the palace was to deliver his elder brother Dhritarashtra, who was too much materially attached. So here is one obstacle on your spiritual journey, excessive attachment. This was Arjuna's problem, excessive attachment, and it is Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means one who's stubbornly attached to the throne. So Dhritarashtra was materially attached. This is an obstacle. Dhritarashtra lost all his state and descendants in the fight with Yudhishthira, and still, due to his sense of helplessness, he did not feel ashamed to accept the charity and hospitality of Yudhishthira. On the part of Yudhishthira, it was quite in order to maintain his uncle in a befitting manner, but acceptance of such magnanimous hospitality by Dhritarashtra was not at all desirable. He accepted it because he thought that there was no alternative. Vidura particularly came to enlighten Dhritarashtra, to give him a lift to the higher status of spiritual cognition. So Vidura's blessing his brother by giving him a higher understanding, a higher status of spiritual understanding. It is a duty of enlightened souls to deliver the fallen ones, and Vidura came for that reason. It is also our duty, because we also have been given a higher understanding of life. So therefore, it is our duty also to help other souls that are innocent, that want to hear, to also give them that opportunity of higher understanding. But talks of spiritual enlightenment are so refreshing that while instructing Dhritarashtra, Vidura attracted the attention of all the members of the family, and all of them took pleasure in hearing him patiently. This is the way of spiritual realization. The message should be heard attentively, and if spoken by a realized soul, it will act on the dormant heart of the conditioned soul. And by continuously hearing, one can attain the perfect stage of self-realization. So the self-realized soul, the pure devotee of the Lord, when he speaks, the realization that he has, to that degree, it has impact on the hearts of the hearers. You can memorize the philosophical points of Krishna consciousness, and you can say that in a class. But it will only have impact on the souls to the degree of one's realization. So we have to realize the teachings, apply the teachings, then share the knowledge. Therefore, Srijit Mahaprabhu says, first perfect your life before you preach. Otherwise, it's like you're telling somebody, please, you must chant 16 rounds and you're chanting 1 round. Where's the potency in that? Because as soon as they ask you, so are you chanting 1 round? Are you chanting 16 rounds? And you say, no, but you must chant. So yes, it's true they must chant. You also have to chant. But that's where the potency comes. Potency follows application, practice, realization. Vidura was realized. He's coming and sharing this knowledge, and it'll impact those because of his realization. Now, that is the first trigger. Right? Someone says something and it goes deep in it, like really rings a bell. And it starts to create certain thought waves, different thought waves, higher thought waves, to start thinking about things in different ways. Then for you to now progress to the next step, you need continuously to hear. So Prabhupada is giving us the science, right? We need to hear to become Krishna conscious, to start on the path of Krishna consciousness, but then we need to continuously hear so that we can continuously progress on the path of realization. Many aspirants, they get triggered into spiritual life. Right? They may get even initiated, which is the beginning of spiritual life, which started off by hearing, and then they get sidetracked and do not continuously hear. That is why Prabhupada gave us so many recordings, so many purports, so that we could hear constantly. There's no lack of material to hear. That is very, very important. This is what nourishes the devotional creeper. Shravanadi Jal, the water that nourishes this creeper that has been sown by that first initial contact. If we don't nourish that bhakti lata with hearing, it's going to dry up. That is why we don't feel inspired to serve, or we feel dry, we feel derailed, we don't feel the juice of spiritual life. And spiritual life is supposed to be an andamburi vardam, ever increasing ocean of nectar, ocean of bliss. If we're not experiencing that, it's not the fault of the process. It's not the fault of the fact that spiritual life is an andamburi vardam. It's the fact that we are not applying the process given by Srila Prabhupada. 15. Abhibrat aryama dandam yatavat agakarishu yavat daddara sutratvam sapad varsha satam yama. As long as Vidura played the part of a Sudra, being cursed by Manduka Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts. Purport. Vidura, born in the womb of a Sudra woman, was forbidden even to be a party of royal heritage along with his brother Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Then how could he occupy the post of a preacher to instruct such learned kings and Kshatriyas as Dhritarashtra and Maj Yudhishthira? So Prabhupada is presenting a question, a doubt. How can a Sudra, Vidura, instruct the Kshatriyas? Because the Brahmana is meant to instruct the Kshatriyas. The first answer is that even though it is accepted that he was a Sudra by birth, because he renounced the world for spiritual enlightenment by the authority of Rishi Maitreya and was thoroughly educated by him in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to occupy the post of an Acharya or spiritual preceptor. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyone who is conversant in the transcendental knowledge or the science of Godhead, be a Brahmana or Sudra, a householder or sannyasi, is eligible to become a spiritual master. Even in the ordinary moral codes maintained by Chanakya, the great politicians and moralists, there is no harm in taking lessons from a person who may be by birth less than a Sudra. This is one part of the answer. And we see Srila Prabhupada perfectly demonstrated this. The point is, do not bother yourself on the qualification or disqualification of someone instructing you. If the instruction is wise, embrace it. Chanak Pandit also said you can get gold from a filthy place. Prabhupada was instructed in India. Prabhupada was distributing his newsletter, magazine, and the one gentleman told him, why don't you write a book? Because that'll be appreciated more. And Prabhupada took his advice. When Prabhupada went to America and he was ill, and the doctor came, and doctor said, well, this man is praying too much. He needs to exercise, to go for his morning walk. And the devotees were upset. How can this person, how can this doctor say such a thing? They want to murder him. But Prabhupada accepted that yes, this doctor is right. I need to go on morning walk. And since then, Prabhupada started his morning walk every single day. And that's how we got the conversations of Srila Prabhupada, early morning conversations, thanks to the doctor. But Prabhupada accepted the instruction. He did not say, well, don't you know who I am? I'm the Walacharya, Senapati Bhakta, sent by Lord Chaitanya, sent by Krishna person to come in. And you are saying this? No, Prabhupada had no false ego in that. He accepted, he was teaching as an Acharya. So that's the first lesson we should learn. If somebody says something, accept it. Now it is true that when we tell someone, when we instruct someone, it's not what you say, but how you say, and that's true. So we should, if we instructing someone, we should instruct with kindness, compassion, and choice of words that is soothing, polite. We may receive instructions in a negative way. So we should apply that when we're giving instructions, we should politely instruct. But if we're receiving, we should not expect polite instructions. If somebody instructs us in a nasty way, we should be able to filter, right, the instruction from the tone, from the intention, from the way it's given. We should try to extract, just like a swan extracting the milk from a mixture of water and milk. We should be able to cultivate the practice of just accepting that instruction and leaving the rest in Krishna's hands. Then Prabhupada continues. The other is that Vidura was not actually a Sudra. He was to play the part of a so-called Sudra for 100 years, being cursed by Manduka Muni. He was the incarnation of Yamaraj, one of the 12 Mahajans, on the level with such exalted personalities such as Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kapila, Bhishma, Prahlad, etc. Being a Mahajan, it was the duty of Yamaraj to preach the cult of devotion to the people of the world, as Narada, Brahma, and other Mahajans do. But Yamaraj is always busy in his plutonic kingdom, punishing the doers of sinful acts. Yamaraj is deputed by the Lord to a particular planet, some hundreds of thousands of miles away from the planet of Earth, to take away the corrupt souls after death and convict them in accordance with their respective sinful activities. Thus, Yamaraj has very little time to take leave from his responsible office of punishing the wrongdoers. There are more wrongdoers than righteous men. So Yamaraj is very busy, more busy than Indra. At least Indra has some time, but Yamaraj, no time. Therefore, Yamaraj has to do more work than other demigods, who are also authorized agents of the Supreme Lord. But he wanted to preach the glories of the Lord, and therefore, by the will of the Lord, he was cursed by Manduka Muni to come to this world in the incarnation of Vidura and work very hard as a great devotee. Such a devotee is neither Sudra nor Brahmana. He is transcendental such divisions of mundane society. Just as the personality of Godhead assumes his incarnation is a hog, but he's neither a hog nor a Brahma. He is above all mundane creatures. Thus, is above all mundane creatures. The Lord and his different authorized devotees sometimes have to play a role of many lower creatures to claim the conditioned souls, but both the Lord and his pure devotees are always in the transcendental position. When Yamaraj thus incarnated himself as Vidura, his post was officiated by Aryama, one of the many sons of Kashyapa and Aditi. The Adityas are sons of Aditi, and there are 12 Adityas. Aryama is one of the 12 Adityas, and therefore it was quite possible for him to take charge of the office of Yamaraj during his 100 years absence in the form of Vidura. The conclusion is that Vidura was never Sudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. So externally, we may not understand, and we may see this, why is Vidura doing this? But here we see from Prabhupada's purports that Vidura, the back history or the backstage of Vidura, he was a great Mahajan, and therefore he was perfectly qualified to instruct. Text 16. Yudhishthiro labda rajyo Drishtva Pautram Kulam Dharam Bratri Bir Lokapala Pai Mumude Parayashriya. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson, competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Yudhishthir reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. Purport. Both Yudhishthir and Arjuna were unhappy from the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra. But even though they were unwilling to kill their own men in the fight. It had to be done as a matter of duty, for it was planned by the supreme will of Lord Shri Krishna. So here's a lesson we can learn, that we see Yudhishthir and Arjuna, they were guided by Krishna. Krishna was personally there guiding them and instructing them what they need to do in relation to the war. Now, we may not be, well, we're definitely not in that position that the Lord is guiding us in terms of what is transpiring in our lives, in our circumstances. We have no clue that this is what the Lord wants or this is not what the Lord wants. So therefore, we have to try to connect on a deeper level through prayer or through collective decision of devotees to at least get some glimpse of what would be the plan of the Lord. Now, in some cases, it's difficult to understand the plan of the Lord. But in other cases, it's very easy to understand the plan of the Lord. So for example, we know that the plan of the Lord is to spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we don't need, to pray to the Lord, my Lord, please, reveal to me what is your plan in spreading Krishna consciousness. No, we know that the Lord wants that, because why? The Lord already came 500 years ago and personally revealed that. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita himself says that one who preaches the glories of Bhagavad Gita is very dear to me. So in this way, we can understand certain circumstances as the will of Krishna. We can also understand Krishna's will and instructions through Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So Prabhupada in his Bhaktivedanta purports has shared many of Krishna's desires and wills. So we can also apply and follow that. After the battle, Yudhishthira was unhappy over such mass killings. Practically, there was none to continue the Kuru dynasty after them, the Pandavas. The only remaining hope was the child in the womb of his daughter-in-law, Uttara, and he was also attacked by Ashwatthama. But by the grace of the Lord, the child was saved. So after the settlement of all disturbing conditions and re-establishment of the peaceful order of the state, and after seeing the surviving child, Parikshit, well satisfied, Yudhishthira felt some relief as a human being, although he had very little attraction for material happiness, which is always illusory and temporary. Now, we see that even though it was Krishna's desire to kill, Yudhishthira was not satisfied or happy with such killing. And that is the natural quality of the devotee, that yes, even though this is the Lord's instruction and I need to follow it, at the same time, causing pain to others is not pleasing to the devotees of the Lord. Then Prabhupada also makes the point that Yudhishthira was not attached to material opulence. Naturally, as a pure devotee, he was taking this as his service and rendering his service as an emperor as a service to the Supreme Lord. This is why the Lord arranged the Mahabharata, to establish Yudhishthira as an exemplary ruler, to help the planet, as well as to leave behind the history of how other rulers should rule. And then Prabhupada's last statement is that material happiness, attraction for material happiness, which is illusory and temporary. Material pleasure is illusory and temporary. We have to understand this, and the more we understand this, the more our pleasure will come from the platform of spiritual life. As a spiritual being, our pleasure is in service to Krishna. Our pleasure is from devotional service, not from temporary material happiness. If we still deriving pleasure from material happiness or sources of material happiness, then it means we have work to do. We need to use our intelligence, understand the detrimental nature of material happiness and attraction to that. And we have to understand that that attachment, that attraction, even though it's giving us temporary pleasure, is really the source of our suffering. The example is given like a child. You buy a nice teddy bear for a child, and the child becomes so excited, a toy, because it's a new toy, and there's pleasure in getting something new. And the child becomes attached to that new toy. But that attachment to that toy is the source of suffering, because that toy is temporary. And because that toy is temporary, that attachment to that toy is going to bring in suffering as soon as that toy ceases to exist. So this is the reality of all pleasures in this world. 17. So now we're going to start hearing the instructions of Vidura and the truth that is going to be revealed. Evam griyeshu saktanam pramatanam tad ihaya atyakramad aviknata kala parama dushtara. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too much attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thoughts. There is a force, and that force is controlling everyone. And what is that force? It is insurmountable, imperceptible, eternal time. Yeah. So insurmountable, that means you cannot overcome this factor of time. And it is eternal time imperceptibly overcomes. It has a very powerful influence that one does not even recognize. So Prabhupada says in his purport, I am now happy. I have everything in order. My bank balance is quite enough. I can now give my children enough estate. I am now successful. The poor beggar sannyasi depends on God, but they come to beg from me. Therefore, I am more than the supreme God. So this is the mentality of the gross materialists. These are some of the thoughts which engross the insanely attached householder who is blind to the passing of eternal time. Right? So we do not want to be blind to the passing of eternal time. That's the lesson. So Prabhupada now further expands. Our duration of life is measured. You cannot extend it even for one single second. It's not like, oh yes, the doctor gave us more time. Nope, the doctor did not give anyone more time. The doctor himself cannot get more time. Nobody can get a single second more. It is measured. And no one is able to enhance it even by a second against the scheduled time ordained by the Supreme Will. Such valuable time, especially for human beings, should be cautiously spent, because even a second passed away imperceptibly cannot be replaced, even in exchange for thousands of gold coins amassed by hard labor. So here is Prabhupada's advice. We should not waste our time. And we already heard that any activity not dedicated in the service of the Supreme Lord, if we have any activity that's not for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, then that is a waste of time. Shrava eva hi kevalam. Total waste of time. So we want to mold our life in such a way that we do not waste time. That means, are we spending time on anything that is not Krishna conscious? And if we are, then that means we are wasting time, valuable time. That time that we could spend to enhance our Krishna consciousness, we are wasting. And why is it valuable? Because if it's gone, it's gone. You cannot reclaim it. You cannot get it back by any amount of gold coins or wealth. Nothing will bring back the time that one spends. Every second of human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to the problem of life. That is repetition of birth and death and revolving in the cycle of 8.4 million different species of life. So how should we use our time? It has to be spent for the ultimate solution to the problems of life. That means stopping repeated birth and death. We are fortunate that we have the solution. Srila Prabhupada has given us. So Prabhupada is warning us of wasting time, telling us how we should employ our time, and giving us the process for the solution. Everything is there. The material body, which is subject to birth and death. So here's the point now. Prabhupada has already given us the instruction. We could heed that instruction and apply it. But Prabhupada understands our mentality that we may not get it. So now Prabhupada is expanding it, giving some more logical arguments in trying to establish that same principle. If you got it, you got it. But Prabhupada is taking the time due to a compassionate father. He's now expanding, he's exploring, he's giving more logical arguments to convince us of this fact. The material body, which is subject to birth and death, disease and old age, is the cause of all suffering of the living being. Otherwise, the living being is eternal. He is never born and nor does he ever die. Foolish persons forget this problem. So if you don't want to suffer, then use your time valuably to stop the problem of birth and death, so that you never have to take birth again. And if you never have to take birth again, you never have to suffer again, ever. So Prabhupada's solution is not a patch solution. You know, when like a bicycle tube, when there's a hole, you take patch and solution and you patch it up. Then it gets another hole, patch and solution, patch it up. No, Krishna consciousness is not a patch solution. It is a permanent solution, once and for all. Therefore, it's a serious matter. Therefore, we need to be very cautious how we spend our time. They do not know at all how to solve the problems of life, but become engrossed in the temporary family affairs, not knowing that eternal time is passing away imperceptibly, and that their measured duration of life is diminishing every second, without any solution to the big problems, namely repetition of birth and death, disease and old age. This is called illusion. How many people celebrate their birthdays? Happy birthday to you. You are getting closer to death. You are getting closer to that measured time of dying. You are getting closer to old age, which means more diseases and death. And yet you are celebrating happy birthday. This is the reality. We have to understand that it's serious matter. If I'm getting older and I'm getting closer to death, I should become even more serious to solve the problem of birth, death, disease, and old age. And Srila Prabhupada often say the animals cannot do this. The animals cannot solve this problem. Human beings have the ability to solve this problem. This is the benefit of Krishna consciousness, that we have come to this platform, to this situation, where by Prabhupada's mercy, we are getting this enlightenment to understand the reality of birth, death, disease, and old age. We passed billions and billions of births and deaths, and because we did not have Prabhupada's association and knowledge and guidance, we kept on taking one birth after another. Now, Prabhupada is revealing the truth and the process. And if we are intelligent, we will embrace it very, very, very seriously. But such illusion cannot work on one who is awake in devotional service of the Lord. So now Prabhupada is giving the other side. Time is ticking. Everybody's getting old. You're going to die. You're going to get diseased. But if you're engaged in devotional service, then it does not impact you. But somebody may say, well, but the devotee is getting old. The devotee may get diseased. So how can Prabhupada say, but such illusion cannot work on one who is awake in devotional service to the Lord? Why? Because when you engage in devotional service, you are not on the material platform. Yes, you have a material body, which slowly will become spiritualized according to your intensity of practice. But when you are awake, which means completely Krishna conscious, now you are not living a material. You're not living on the material plane, and neither are you living a material life. Yudhishthira Maharaj and his brothers, the Pandavas, were all engaged in service of Lord Krishna, and they had very little attraction for the illusory happiness of this material world. As we have discussed previously, Maharaj Yudhishthira was fixed in the service of Mukunda, the Lord who can award liberation, and therefore he had no attraction even for such comforts of life as are available in the kingdom of heaven, because even the happiness obtained on the planet of Brahmaloka is also temporary and illusory. Because a living being is eternal, he can be happy only in the eternal abode of the kingdom of God, Paravyoma, from which no one returns to this region of repeated birth and death, disease and old age. Therefore, any comfort of life or any material happiness which does not warrant an eternal life is but illusion for the eternal living entity. Any comfort of life or any material happiness that does not warrant an eternal life is but illusion for the eternal living entity. One who understands this factually is learned, and such a learned person can sacrifice any amount of material happiness to achieve the desired goal known as Brahma Sukham, or absolute happiness. Real transcendentalists are hungry for this happiness, and as hungry men cannot be made happy by all comforts of life minus foodstuff, so the man hungry for eternal absolute happiness cannot be satisfied by any amount of material happiness. Therefore, the instruction described in this verse cannot be applied to Maharaj Yudhishthira or his brothers or mothers. It was meant for persons like Dhritarashtra, for whom Vidura came especially to impart lessons. So we need to look at our life, take inventory of our life, and see what part of my life is linked to material pleasures. Where am I getting what is the source of my happiness? If it's material pleasure, it means I need to work on that. I need to really understand what am I doing in that? What is it causing me in terms of, is it helping me or destroying me? So we need to understand that as eternal living beings, our source of pleasure is not of this material world, it is of the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, it is of service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So if we are engrossed in serving Krishna and our pleasure is derived from service, then we are rightfully situated. If our pleasure is coming from any other sources, just like there may be aspiring devotees gaining pleasure from watching DVDs, Bollywood movies, this is the wrong source. One, it's the wrong source for the living entity, which means you will never be happy. So you're wasting time, wasting resource. Second is that entertainment, which you apparently thinking is giving you happiness, is actually increasing your impressions in the wrong direction. It's allowing you to engage in sinful activities. It's not spiritually productive. It's ultimately not solving the eternal problem of birth, death, disease, and old age. So really, it's not beneficial. It's not healthy for a spiritual practitioner. And yes, it's going to require determination. It's going to require some work. Right? Spiritual life does not come easy. Nothing valuable in this world comes easy. It requires effort. It requires determination. It requires patience. It requires commitment. It requires proper understanding. So we need to really take seriously to spiritual life so that our source of pleasure is 100% based on what Srila Prabhupada wants us to embrace. 18. Vidurastad abhipretya datarashtram abhasata rajam nirgam yatam shrigram pashyedam bhayam agatam. Mahatma Vidura knew all this, and therefore he addressed Dhritarashtra saying, my dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you. So Vidura is not sugarcoating his instructions. Oh, my dear brother, don't worry, it's all okay. Yeah, maybe you should think of, leaving. Nope. Right? He is cutting. Please get out of here immediately. A real sadhu is cutting. Purport. Cruel death cares for no one. And we are all going to face cruel death. And according to our consciousness, we will experience either the cruelty or the kindness of mercy. So we have to prepare. Especially devotees of the Lord, we cannot say, well, gee, I didn't know that death is going to come. Oh, I don't know it's going to be that painful. Oh, I'm not prepared. No, we have absolutely no excuse. Prabhupada, in his purports, is revealing the reality, and therefore he's giving us an opportunity to be ready, to prepare. So cruel death cares for no one. Be he Dhritarashtra or even Ma Yudhishthira. Note, not just Dhritarashtra, even the devotee, even the pure devotee. Prabhupada himself had to go through it, even Ma Yudhishthira. Therefore, spiritual instruction, as was given to old Dhritarashtra, was equally applicable to younger Ma Yudhishthira. Very, very important and instructive. These instructions are not for only dying people. These instructions are for everyone to heed and to apply. Sooner, the better. As a matter of fact, everyone in the royal palace, including the king and his brothers and mother, was rapidly attending the lectures. But it was known to Vidura that his instructions were especially meant for Dhritarashtra, who was too materialistic. So Krishna is also making the arrangements for the Pandavas to also be prepared. Right? It's not their time now, but if it's not your time now, doesn't mean that your time is not coming. That's why one poet, he wrote a poem. I think William Wilworth's. He wrote a poem, "Who does a bell toll for?" So in Christianity, when somebody dies, they ring the bell, church bell, telling someone that there's a funeral. And his poem was, "Who does the bell toll for?" And in his poem, he writes, it told for thee, my friend, it told for thee, not for the person who's gone. It tells you, you next. So therefore, don't take life cheaply. Understand the reality that's going to face us. And if you're prepared, Prabhupada says that you can become old gracefully and die blissfully. So we want to die blissfully, but we cannot die blissfully if we are not prepared. So what is the preparation? Prabhupada is going to reveal to us. The word Rajan is especially addressed to Dhritarashtra significantly. Dhritarashtra was the eldest son of his father. And therefore, according to the law, he was to be installed on the throne of Hastinapur. But because he was blind from birth, he was disqualified from his right claim. But he could not forget the bereavement, and his disappointment was somewhat compensated after the death of Pandu, his younger brother. His younger brother left behind him some minor children, and Dhritarashtra became the natural guardian for them. But at heart, he wanted to become the factual king and hand the kingdom over to his own sons, headed by Duryodhana. With all these imperial ambitions, Dhritarashtra wanted to become a king, and he contrived all sorts of intrigues in consultation with his brother-in-law Shakuni. But everything failed by the will of the Lord. And at the last stage, even after losing everything, men and money, he wanted to remain as king, being the eldest of the uncle of Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira, as a matter of duty, maintained Dhritarashtra in royal honor, and Dhritarashtra was happily passing away his numbered years in the illusion of being a king or the royal uncle of King Yudhishthira. Vidura, as a saint and as duty-bound, affectionate youngest brother of Dhritarashtra, wanted to awaken Dhritarashtra from his slumber of disease and old age. Vidura therefore sarcastically addressed Dhritarashtra as the king, which he was actually not. Everyone is the servant of eternal time, and therefore no one can be king in this material world. King means the person who can order. The celebrated English king wanted to order time and tide, but time and tide refused to obey his order. Therefore, one is a false king in the material world, and Dhritarashtra was particularly reminded of this false position and of the factual fearfulness happenings which had already approached him at that time. Vidura asked him to get out immediately if he wanted to be saved from the fearful situation which was approaching him fast. He did not ask Yudhishthira in that way because he knew that a king like Yudhishthira is aware of all the fearful situations of this flimsy world and would take care of himself in due course, even though Vidura might not be present at that time. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, as a devotee, knew these instructions, and similarly, we as followers of Srila Prabhupada, the statement should be true. We should also know this very factually, very clearly, and it should be revealed in our daily activities and our life. Right? If we have been practicing for a few years and we're still not convinced of these ABC canons, it means we are not serious about spiritual life. Prabhupada's adjectives, flimsy world. We are living in a flimsy world. This world, and it's not like, we're living in the golden era and therefore it's very comfortable and we can practice Krishna consciousness, should be happy, it's like, Jai, Hari Bol. Nope. We are living in a very precarious situation. So we cannot change the environment externally, but we definitely can change the environment internally and transform that environment so that when this time does come, we are ready. 19. Pratikriya na yasyeya kutas chit karihichit prabho sa esha bhagavan kala sarvesham na samagata. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. You could be the king, queen, president, whatever the situation. It cannot be remedied. My Lord, it is the supreme personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, that has approached us all. Purport. There is no superior power which can check the cruel hands of death. No one wants to die, however acute the source of bodily suffering may be. Even in the days of so-called scientific advancement of knowledge, there is no remedial measure either for old age or for death. Old age is the notice of the arrival of death served by cruel time, and no one can refuse to accept either summon, calls, or the supreme judge of eternal time. It's amazing how Prabhupada's language, choice of words. So this is the justice, the law of justice, the supreme high court, the highest court. Nobody can escape the judgment given by the high court. And you're going to get a summons. And when the summons come, you can't say, oh, so busy, I forgot, I've got things to do. Can you please, here's my business card, call me later. Nope, sorry. Summons is given. Sometimes like you get a traffic fine and it doesn't come to your box. So you can, say, well, I didn't get a summons. Well, with cruel time, summons is there. And how is it coming? In the form of old age. Now, it's interesting. Somebody will say, well, I'm not old yet. I'm still young. And Prahlad Maharaj asked the question, how do we know you're old? And the answer is, if you're going to die tomorrow, then you are old today. Because if you're going to die tomorrow, you already got the summons now. If you got the summons now, it means you're old. So old doesn't mean like I'm 80 years old. This body is 80 years old. No. Old means that if you're dying tomorrow, you're old already. And that is why Krishna consciousness cannot wait for no time. This is explained before Dhritarashtra because he might ask to Vidura to find out some remedial measure for the imminent fearful situation, as he had ordered many times before. Before ordering, however, Vidura informed Dhritarashtra that there was no remedial measure by anyone or from any source in this material world. Now we need to become convinced of this. If it's your time, it's your time. You will not be able to extend it even 1 minute. Right? So you cannot extend it even for 1 single second. Therefore, prepare for that moment and accept it. If it's coming, it's coming. This is what Prabhupada also taught us, that we're going to have to go through the final lesson. Some lessons in your life you could skip. Some tests you could skip. But this lesson, unfortunately, you can't skip. Every single one of us are going to face this lesson. So let us understand the lesson and let us prepare for this lesson. So Prabhupada continues. And because there is no such thing in the material world, death is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it is said by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 10:34. So there is no source and there is no remedial measure. The doctors may say, we'll cure death and we'll have people, people will live eternally and we can, you won't get old. You cannot control the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you cannot control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means there is no solution to disease and old age and death. Death cannot be checked by anyone or from any source within this material world. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be immortal and underwent a severe type of penance by which the whole universe trembled. And Brahma himself approached him to dissuade Hiranyakashipu from such severe type of penance. Hiranyakashipu asked Brahma to award him the blessing of immortality, but Brahma said that he himself was subject to death, even in the topmost planet. So how could he award him the benediction of immortality? So how can the scientists find a solution to immortality? How can anyone even ask for immortality if Brahma himself, the creator, the first living being, the highest living being, himself has to die? So there is death even in the topmost planet of the universe, and what to speak of other planets, which are far, far inferior in quality to Brahmaloka and the residing planet of Brahma. Wherever there is the influence of eternal time, there is this set of tribulations, namely birth, disease, old age, and death. And all of them are invincible. So we need to be convinced, no matter how advanced technology, science gets, manipulating DNA, restructuring, creating organs, you name it. These aspects, birth, disease, old age, and death, are invincible. The Bhagavatam is the truth. It is Krishna. Therefore, there will never ever be a time in the history of creation, in the past, in the present, and in the future, where these four realities will cease to exist. The fact that we have taken birth, disease will come, old age will come, and finally, death will come. 20. Yena chaiva bina vipanoyam prane priyat tamer api jana sadyo viyujete kim utanyer dana dibi. Whoever is under the influence of supreme color, eternal time, must surrender his most dear life, and what to speak of other things such as wealth, honor, children, land, and home. Prabhupada would say, everyone has to surrender. Everybody has to bow down flat to the Supreme Lord at the time of death. Either you bow down voluntarily to the Supreme Shamsundar, Tribhanga form of Krishna, or you bow down flat dandavats by force of time. But everybody has to surrender. A great Indian scientist, busy in his plan-making business, was suddenly called by invincible eternal time while going to attend a very important meeting of the planning commission, and he had to surrender his life, wife, children, house, land, wealth, etc. During the political upsurge in India and its division into Pakistan and Hindustan, so many rich and influential Indians had to surrender life, property, and honor due to the influence of time. And there are hundreds and thousands of examples like this all over the world, all over the universe, which are all effects of the influence of time. The most wonderful thing is people think, I'm excluded. Everyone is on the list besides my name. Sorry to disappoint you. Everyone's name is on the list, including yours, including mine. Everyone's name is there. No one is an exception. Therefore, if nobody is an exception, the conclusion is that there is no powerful living being within the universe who can overcome the influence of time. Many poets have written verses lamenting the influence of time. Many devastations have taken place over the universes due to the influence of time. and no one can check them by any means. Even in our daily life, so many things come and go in which we have no hand, but we have to suffer or tolerate them without remedial measure. That is the result of time. So time is powerful. It influences everyone. Even the Supreme Lord who comes to this material world is influenced by that time. Therefore, you find Lord Ramachandra who comes, he had to leave. Krishna comes, he had to leave. Lord Chaitanya comes, he had to leave. Srila Prabhupada comes, he had to leave. We're not excluded. But Krishna, Lord Ramachandra, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, they come to teach us in this prison house how to perfectly live. We can't say, well, why am I influenced like this? This is not right. I'm such a good person. I didn't do anything bad. Really? What are you doing in the prison if you didn't do anything bad? The prisoner is put into prison. He says, no, I didn't do any bad. Oh yeah, then why are you in prison? Why are we in a material prison? If we're in a material prison, it means we did something bad. You may not remember, but the fact that you are here means you did something bad. So the fact that you're already in the prison, do not worry how you got here. Learn how you should live and what you should not do, and do what you need to do to get out, so that you don't come back to the prison. It's amazing how we don't take Krishna consciousness seriously, even though we don't want the pains of this material world. If we become serious, it also means that we know that we are scot-free from the pains, because our karma is still there. And Prabhupada gives the example of the fan, right? The fan's moving, and once you take to Krishna consciousness, the plugs pulled out and the fan is still moving, but it's slowing down. So until the fan is not completely stopped, unfortunately, we'll have to burn some karma. And while we're burning that karma, let us remember Krishna. Let us chant Hare Krishna. And let us rejoice that, thank Srila Prabhupada, this is the last time. Hallelujah. Last time that we're going to go through this experience. 21. Pitri Bratir Surit Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atma Cha Jaraya Grashta Param Geham Upasase. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended a major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living in the home of another. Purport. The king is reminded of his precarious condition, influenced by crude time. And by his past experience, he should have been more intelligent to see what was going to happen in his own life. His father, Vichitravirya, died long ago, when he and his younger brothers were all little children. And it was due to the care and kindness of Bhishmadev that they were properly brought up. Then again, his brother Pandu died also. Then in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, his 100 sons and his grandsons all died, along with all other well-wishers like Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Karna, and many other kings and friends. So he had lost all men and money, and now he was living at the mercy of his nephew, whom he had put into troubles of various types. And despite all these reverses, he thought that he would prolong his life more and more. Vidura wanted to point out to Dhritarashtra that everyone has to protect himself by his action and the grace of the Lord. Beautiful point by Srila Prabhupada. Everyone has to protect themselves by his actions and the grace of the Lord. We know that this is also true in terms of the two fingers too short, right? If you want anything to be successful, it's your actions and the mercy of Krishna. So if we also want to overcome birth, death, disease, and old age, it's not only going to happen by Krishna's mercy. You have to put your share. You have to put your actions. You have to prepare. You can't just say, I'll depend on Krishna. No, dependence on Krishna is one thing. Your actions is required. Right? And what are those actions? What do we need to do? Prabhupada reveals that again and again in his purports. Prabhupada continues. One has to execute his duty faithfully, depending on the result on the supreme authority. No friend, no children, no father, no brother, no state, and no one else can protect a person who is not protected by the Supreme Lord. One should therefore seek the protection of the Supreme Lord, for the human form of life is meant for seeking that protection. He was warned of his precarious condition more and more by the following words. So now the sauce is becoming more spicy. Vidura is now going to really give his cutting instructions now. But Prabhupada is making a very important instruction here. Human life is meant for seeking protection. We have to understand we are helpless. And when we are helpless, do not take shelter of those who themselves are not protected. We may, get some level of protection from doctors, from family members, but ultimately they cannot protect us. The ultimate protector is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we want to be embraced in the protection of the Supreme Lord. That means taking shelter of the holy name of Krishna. That means taking shelter of the remembrance of Krishna. And we need to practice very seriously and sincerely, taking shelter of the holy name, submitting ourselves in that supreme protection. If we are able to master that full shelter and protection of the holy name, then no matter what the circumstances afford, no matter what will come in the future in the form of disease and death, we will be protected. It's not that we will not experience the pain and the trauma, but at least we have the solace that Krishna is with us. And if we are sincerely actioning to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, even if the circumstances present themselves that we may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord when cruel death comes, Krishna will remember us. Why? Because he is the Supreme Personality. He's not impersonal. He's not a brick wall. He is a person. He recognizes our efforts and actions. Therefore, for us, Srila Prabhupada is laying the path, revealing the reality, opening the doors to a blissful future. Therefore, there should be absolutely no despondency, no reason to fear the future, because Prabhupada is laying it very, very clearly and wonderfully for us perfect and pass this final examination. 22. Anda pureva vidiro manda pragnascha sampratam vishirna danto mandagni saraga kapam udpahan. You have been blind from your very birth, and recently you have become hard of hearing. Your memory is shortened, and your intelligence is disturbed. Your teeth are loose, your liver is defective, and you are coughing up mucus. The reality of old age. It's going to catch every single one of us. We have to appreciate and understand this is the reality. We cannot avoid it. It's amazing how people try to cover up old age, even when people are so old and they can see the reality. It's like an old man comes home. He takes his artificial eyes out. Then he takes his artificial hearing aid out. Then he takes his false teeth out. He takes his wig out. He takes his walking stick aside, puts his walking stick aside. This is the reality. And still is thinking, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm okay. No, you're not okay. You can see it very clearly. So we need to accept the reality and the influence of time. Prabhupada says the symptom of old age, which had already developed in Dhritarashtra, were all one after another pointing out to him as a warning that death was nearing very quickly. And still, he was foolishly carefree about his future. We do not want to be in this boat. The signs of old age. I can see for myself, what I did 30 years ago, I can't do now. It's just the reality of time. In another 30 years, I will not be able to do what I do now. It's just the reality and influence of time. We have to accept that. That's the reality. So I don't become disturbed by the influence of time. I understand this is the phase of time. In fact, I'll be speaking about that point on the final day of Kartik in Lens. So we're not going to get into that point. But we have to appreciate and accept the influence of time. The signs pointed out by Vidura in the body of Dhritarashtra were signs of apakshaya, or dwindling of the material body before the last stroke of death. So we should be prepared. And if it happens that Krishna gives us an extension of time, thank you very much, Krishna, we're going to be prepared again. The body is born, it develops, stays, creates other bodies, dwindles, and then vanishes. But foolish men want to make a permanent settlement of the perishable body and think that their estate, children, society, country, etc. will give them protection. With such foolish ideas, they become overtaken by such temporary engagements and forget altogether that they must give up this temporary body and take a new one, again to arrange for another term of society, friendship, love, again to perish ultimately. They forget that their permanent identity and become foolishly active for impermanent occupations, forgetting altogether their prime duty. Saints and sages like Vidura approach such foolish men to awaken them to the real situation, and they take such sadhus and saints as parasites of society, and almost all of them refuse to hear the words of such sadhus and saints, although they welcome show-bottle sadhus and so-called saints who can satisfy their senses. Vidura was not a sadhu to satisfy the ill-gotten sentiments of Dhritarashtra. He was correctly pointing out the real situation of life and how one can save oneself from such catastrophes. So that's our good fortune, we are hearing the same instructions that Dhritarashtra got through Srila Prabhupada. And we are being warned. And the beauty is we can save ourselves from the catastrophes that are going to come, especially of forgetting our permanent identity and falling prey to the cycle of birth and death. We want to become convinced that this should be our last birth by Prabhupada's mercy. Prabhupada wants that. Prabhupada's desiring. Prabhupada's mercy is that. It's like a teacher educating his children and wanting to get exemption, wanting to get distinction. And when the children get distinction, it amplifies the teacher's, it glorifies the teacher. So when we perfect the art of dying and we save ourselves from the catastrophes that are going to approach us, that's going to approach everyone, this simply glorifies Srila Prabhupada. 23. Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasya yatha bhavan bhimapa varjitam pindam adeta grihapalavat. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Verily, you are living just like a household dog and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. A sadhu should not flatter kings or rich men to live comfortably at their cost. A sadhu is to speak to the householders about the naked truth of life so that they may come to their senses about the precarious life in material existence. Dhritarashtra is a typical example of an attached old man in household life. He had become a pauper in the true sense, yet he wanted to live comfortably in the house of the Pandavas, and whom Bhima especially is mentioned because personally he killed two prominent sons of Dhritarashtra, namely Duryodhan and Dushashan. Bhima killed every one of the sons. These two sons were very much dear to him for their notorious and nefarious activities, and Bhima is particularly pointed out because he killed these two pet sons. Why was Dhritarashtra living there at the house of the Pandavas? Because he wanted to continue his life comfortably even at the risk of all humiliation. Vidura therefore was astonished how powerful is the urge to continue life. This sense of continue one's life indicates that a living being is eternally a living entity and does not want to change his bodily habitation. So why we don't want to die? Very simple. Prabhupada is giving the answer. Because we are eternal. So if we're eternal, we should be questioning, why do I have to get old? Why do I have to die? I need to solve this. How do I solve it? Prabhupada is giving the instructions. Krishna consciousness. The foolish man does not know that a particular term of bodily existence is awarded to him to undergo a term of imprisonment. And the human body is awarded after many, many births and deaths as a chance for self-realization to go back home, back to Godhead. But persons like Dhritarashtra try to make plans to live there in a comfortable position with profit and interest, for they do not see things as they are. Dhritarashtra is blind and continues to hope to live comfortably in the midst of all kinds of reverses of life. A sadhu like Vidura is meant to awaken such blind persons and thus help them go back home, back to Godhead, where life is eternal. Once going there, no one wants to come back to this material world of miseries. We can just imagine how responsible a task is entrusted to a sadhu like Mahatma Vidura. So this is the reality. 24. Agnir nishrishto dattascha garo daras chadushtita pritam shetram dhanam yesham tattair ashubhi shiyat. There is no need to live a degraded life and subsist on charity of those whom you tried to kill by arson and poisoning. You also insulted one of their wives and usurped their kingdom and wealth. The system of Varnashram religion sets aside a part of one's life completely for the purpose of self-realization and attainment of salvation for the human form in the human form of life. That is routine division of life. But persons like Dhritarashtra, even at their weary, ripened age, want to stay home, even in a degraded condition of accepting charity from enemies. Vidura wanted to point this out and impress upon him that it was better to die like his sons than accept such humiliating charity. 5,000 years ago, there was one Dhritarashtra, but at the present moment, there are Dhritarashtras in every home. Politicians especially do not retire from political activities unless they are dragged by the cruel hand of death or killed by some opposing element. To stick to family life to the end of one's human life is the grossest type of degradation, and there is an absolute need for the Viduras to educate such Dhritarashtras even at the present moment. So we have to appreciate that our transition in life should be slowly accumulating to the point where we're dedicating all our time to the service of Krishna. Sooner the better, but it has to be, we cannot continually be engrossed in materialistic family affairs till we die. It's very unfortunate. So that was the Vedic system. Now, Srila Prabhupada's blessing is that if we bring Krishna in our own family and our own life, then we should now be molding our life in such a way that more and more time is dedicated to the two Bhagavatas, the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. The book Bhagavat, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the person Bhagavat, Srila Prabhupada. So as we're getting older and older, more and more time should be dedicated to these two personalities for perfecting our life. 25. Tasyapi tava deho yam kripa nasya jivi visho paraitya nichato jirno jaraya vasasi eva. Despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live, even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. The words kripanasya jivisho are significant. There are two classes of men. One is called kripana and the other is called brahmana. The kripana, or the miserly man, has no estimation of his material body, but the brahmana has a true estimation of himself and the material body. The kripana, having a wrong estimation of his material body, wants to enjoy sense gratification with his utmost strength, and even in old age he wants to become young man by medical treatment or otherwise. Dhritarashtra is addressing herein as a kripana because without any estimation of his material body, he wants to live at any cost. Vidura is trying to open his eyes to see that he cannot live more than his term and that he must prepare for death. Since death is inevitable, why should he accept such humiliating position for living? It is better to take the right path, even at the risk of death. Human life is meant for finishing all kinds of miseries of material existence, and life should be so regulated that one can achieve the desired goal. I'm going to read that again. Human life is meant for finishing all kinds of miseries of material existence, and life should be so regulated that one can achieve the desired goal. Dhritarashtra, due to his wrong conceptions of life, had already spoiled 80% of his achieved energy. So it behooves him to utilize the remaining days of his miserly life for the ultimate good. Such a life is called miserly because one cannot properly utilize the assets of human form of life. Only by good luck does such a miserly man meet a self-realized soul like Vidura, and by his instruction gets rid of the nations of material existence. And we have met such a self-realized soul, and therefore our good luck is that we have met Srila Prabhupada. 26. Gata swatam imam deham virakto mukta bandana avignata gatir jahyat savaidhira udarita. He is called undisturbed, who goes to an unknown remote place and freed from all obligations, quits his material body when it has become useless. Narottam Das Thakur, a great devotee and acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnava sect, has sung, quote, "My dear Lord, I've simply wasted my life having obtained a human body. I've neglected to worship your lordship, and therefore I've willingly drunk poison," unquote. In other words, the human body is especially meant for cultivating knowledge of devotional service to the Lord, without which life becomes full of anxieties and miserable conditions. Therefore, one who has spoiled his life without such cultural activities is advised to leave home without knowledge of his friends and relatives, and thus been freed from all obligations of family, society, and country, and give up the body at some unknown destination, so that others may not know where and how he has met his death. Dhira means one who is not disturbed, even when there is sufficient provocation. One cannot give up a comfortable family life due to his affection relations with wife and children. Self-realization is obstructed by such undue affection for family. And if anyone is at all able to forget such a relation, he is called undisturbed or dhira. This is, however, the path of renunciation based on frustrated life. But stabilization of such renunciation is possible only by the association of bona fide saints and selfless soul, by which one can engage in loving devotional service of the Lord. Sincere surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is possible by awakening the transcendental sense of service. This is made possible by association with pure devotees of the Lord. Dhritarashtra was lucky enough to have a brother whose very association was a source of liberation for his frustrated life. So the path that Prabhupada is recommending for us is to have the powerful association of pure souls and cultivate devotional service, the sense of transcendental service, awakening transcendental sense of service. So to be able to be fully engaged in the service of Krishna amidst association of devotees, this is how we should prepare for leaving this world. 27. Yaswakat parato veha jata nirveda atmana riddhi kritvam harim gehat pravrejat na sa narotamam. He is certainly first-class man who awakens and understands either by himself or from others the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the dhira, or one who is not disturbed by being away from family association, one who is in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi by frustrated sentiments, and three, a sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. The idea is that the renounced order of life, after frustrated life of sentiment in the material world, may be a stepping stone on the path of self-realization, but real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as a Paramatma. One may live in the darkest jungle, alone, out of home, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstances. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, forms, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees, and this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. Amazing statement by Srila Prabhupada. One may live in the darkest jungle, alone out of home, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, in association with pure devotees, and this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. One who desires material benefit by such devotional activities can never depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he sits in everyone's heart. Nor does the Lord give any direction to persons who worship him for material gain. Such materialistic devotees may be blessed by the Lord for material benefits, but they cannot reach the stage of first-class human being as mentioned above, mentioned. There are many examples of such sincere devotees in the history of the world, especially in India, and they are our guides on the path of self-realization. Mahatma Vidura is one such great devotee of the Lord, and we should all try to follow in his lotus footsteps for self-realization. 28. Ato dichinam disham yattu swayur agnata gatir bhavan ito rikpak prayaksha kala pumsam guno vikarsanam. Please, therefore, leave for the north immediately without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of men. Purport. One can compensate for life of frustration by becoming a dhira or leaving home for good without communicating with relatives, and Vidura advised his elder brother to adopt this way without delay because very quickly the age of Kali was approaching. A conditioned soul is already degraded by the material association, and still in Kali Yuga the good qualities of men will deteriorate to lower standard. He was advised to leave home before Kali Yuga approached because the atmosphere which was created by Vidura, his valuable instructions on the fact of life, would fade away due to the influence of age, which was fast approaching. To become Narottam, or a first-class human being, depending completely on the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, is not possible for ordinary men. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:28 that a person who is completely relieved of all taints of sinful acts can alone depend on the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So purifying our sins is key, the personality of Godhead. Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura at least to become Dhira in the beginning, if it were impossible for him to become a sannyasi or a Narottam. Persistently endeavoring on the line of self-realization helps a person to rise to the condition of Narottam from the stage of Dhira. The Dhira stage is attained after prolonged practice of yoga system, but by the grace of Vidura, one can attain stage immediately simply by willing to adopt the means of the Dhira stage, which is the preparatory stage for sannyas. Sannyas stage is the preparatory stage for Paramahamsa, or the first grade devotee of the Lord. So Vidura is instructing Dhritarashtra on what he should do: leave to the north, leave to a higher destination. And next week, we will hear what Dhritarashtra does. So very, very wonderful instructions for us, because it's real, it's reality. We're all going to be facing death. We want to prepare. We do not want to be naive. And Prabhupada's giving us the formula to be 100% Krishna conscious, engage in devotional service, perfect our life, and join him in the spiritual world. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gopramanande, Hari Hari Bol. Any one last question or comments before the power goes out? If I don't cover the questions, I will take note of them and we will definitely cover them next week. Hare Krishna, thanks for the powerful Krishna Katha. I have two queries. Through Srimad Bhagavatam, we know that the interplanetary space travel is possible. Is time travel not possible in the material world, being insurmountable by, as indicated by Srimad Bhagavatam? So time travel is not really mentioned in the Bhagavatam from my limited understanding. Definitely dimensional travel is there. So different times are there in terms of present, and one can enter into the different dimensions, but not time travel. You can't go back. That's like a fictitious going to the future, going to the past. Future, you can know the future, but you can't travel into the future, right? But you definitely can know the future and live in the present. In the spiritual world, there is only present. There's no past and there's no future. It's only present. All right, so I'm going to stop there. We got 1 minute before our times. Thank you very much. I will cover all the other questions that we have next week. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback, and Piyush, we will cover you next week. I need to stop the session so the recording can be there. Thank you very much. We will meet again next week. Gantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gop Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol.